I've been using this study technique this term at Cambridge University, and I've never been so on top of work. Essentially, all I do is every time I learn something new in class or something which I think is worth knowing, I'll make digital flashcards using Anki, and then every day I'll review the flashcards which Anki recommends for me. Now this might sound quite simple, and it is, but it's extremely powerful, and here's why. First of all, flashcards are just a great way to study in general because they use active recall. This simply means that when you study using flashcards, you have to actively recall content as opposed to passively reading or highlighting or copying, which is a really inefficient way to study. By actively recalling content, you have to think more, so it's more mentally demanding, but because it is more mentally demanding, it's a better way and more efficient way to study. Copying stuff or highlighting stuff might feel effective, but it's really not mentally demanding and therefore a very inefficient way to learn content. The second point is about spaced repetition. You might be thinking, why can't I just use Quizlet or Brainscape or any other digital flashcard? The thing is, they don't use spaced repetition. Every time you study those flashcards, you have to review every single card every time you want to study. And that's really dumb because why would you look at the cards you already know quite well? Well, Anki only shows you the cards that you don't know well, so it's optimized so you can memorize content as efficiently as possible. In case you're wondering how Anki does that, every time it shows you a card and the answer, you have to rate yourself in terms of how well you knew it, good, not good, etc. And depending on what you put down, it will determine when you see the card next. If you know the card well, then you won't see it frequently, but if you don't know it well, you'll see it frequently. This means that you can memorize huge amounts of content in not so much time with not so much effort. I only discovered Anki in the 7 weeks before my exams in my first year at Cambridge, and in those 7 weeks I made and memorized 1100 flashcards, and I'm pretty sure Anki is the main reason I did well in those exams. In addition to using active recall and spaced repetition, this technique is great because it relies on you making the flashcards when the content is fresh in your head. It's true that you could make the flashcards weeks or months after you came across it in class, and that's not a bad idea. But the thing is, if you make it straight after your class, the content is fresh in your head, so it's easier to be familiar enough with it to make flashcards. Plus, if it's still fresh in your head, you might remember details which you would otherwise forget. Another point is that by making and reviewing flashcards over a long period of time, you're investing your time in such a way that you could still get a good grade without studying a lot just before the exam. What I mean is you could spend 10 hours the day before your exam studying and cramming, and it might work, but it's very risky and unsustainable, plus you'll probably forget a lot of the content just after the exam. Or if you make Anki flashcards after each class and then spend 10 or 20 minutes a day studying those flashcards, you'll probably find it a lot easier to get a top grade compared to cramming the day before. Also, the flashcards are digital, which again comes with many benefits. You don't need to use pen and paper, you can make flashcards really quickly if you can type fast, you can share flashcards with other people, and you can download flashcards that other people made. And there's basically no limit to how many flashcards you can make on Anki. When you use paper, that's a lot of paper if you want to have a lot of flashcards. Plus, I guess it's more environmentally friendly. Finally, Anki is also great because it's free and it's got no ads. It's free on Mac, it's free on Windows, on Android. For some reason, it's not free on the App Store for Apple, but it's fine, just don't study on your iPhone. But that's another point, you could study on your phone, like if you're in the bus somewhere, you can just look at some flashcards on the bus. You can study anywhere. I should probably clarify, I'm not being sponsored in any way by Anki, and I'm doing this just because I think Anki is so amazing. Now, I've said a lot of great things about Anki and this whole making flashcards every day and reviewing them every day, but there's a few words of warning that I will add. Anki is great, but it should only be a component of how you study, not the only way you study. Because if you just use Anki, that's probably a bad idea, depending on what you're trying to do. When it comes to exams, exam technique is extremely important, so you need to go through past papers. You can't just memorize the content and expect to do well. For example, if you have to write essays in your exam, you should definitely practice writing essays, because a good essay is more than just regurgitating content. Similarly, for maths or physics or stuff like that, you need to be able to do the equations and solve the stuff, and that again isn't just memorization, it's actually practicing and doing the stuff. You should also not fall in the trap. You can memorize content without understanding it, but that's a bad idea for two reasons. First of all, if you don't understand it, it's harder to memorize. How can you memorize something you don't understand? Plus, if you don't understand the content, you're probably going to do less well in the exam because they want to test your understanding, not your ability to regurgitate stuff. In terms of how I use Anki, I use it in quite a simple way. I just have different decks depending on the subject, and then within each subject I subdivide the decks into content And then the flashcards I use are just pretty simple. Question in the front, answer on the back, and that's it. But you can customize Anki a lot, so it is extremely powerful. In conclusion, I think that this technique can literally change your life, and I'm not being over dramatic, I'm just being honest. So please consider trying it and see how it goes, and whatever you find out, please put it in the comments so people can see if it does or doesn't work. Thanks for watching.